Hey, what's up everyone? Sean here, and welcome to another new video. Now, I wanted to talk about in this video about the MacBook Neo, kind of everything about it, not like tech specs or things like that, because that's all very, very heavily and already well covered by other people, but just what it is, who it's for, my thoughts on it, and just everything about it, because it is really a kind of like not a redesign, but a rethought idea that I've not seen from Apple in a very long time, and that's an exciting thing for me because before the MacBook Neo existed, I feel like there was kind of like a big gap for computers, not talking about iPads, but actual personal computers for the price range. And back then, or at that price range, you had the kind of the entry level stuff as far as like the Chromebooks. It's like all the computers that your kids, if you have kids, will use in like elementary school to learn stuff on or learn how to type on, which is cool. Like, there's the Chromebook era of stuff, and it's not always Chromebooks, but primarily is Chromebooks. And the price range is anywhere from like $100 up to like $350, $400 at the top of that list for the most part. And it's funny because those Chromebooks or that style of laptop is of course made with the absolute cheapest materials for a reason. But they're pretty efficient. They're pretty good at what they do. They're made for basic web browsing, learning how to type on, and just a basic computer that is literally, if you don't want to have an iPad or a tablet, then there you go. And they're cheap. They're half the price of an iPad. So why wouldn't you, or of a $500 iPad, I should say. So they're good for that. And then from that pricing, again 350-ish, you would then jump up way more Mac wise to the entry level without an educational discount, but the entry level MacBook Air or MacBook or whatever you want to call it now, where it would be right around at like $1,000 or maybe a little bit less on average if you get it on sale, but $1,000 for the most part for base level everything, and that's where the Mac has been for a long time as far as starting out. And for that price, you get all the software, security features, all that kind of fun stuff. You get Mac OS on there, whatever version you're running, and then you get, of course, the cool factor of it being a laptop and having all day battery life, because those Chromebooks, to my knowledge, are like maybe like 4 or 5 hours long for battery, and that's it. So you get the benefits of having an Apple laptop, but you're spending double or triple in some cases as much as a Chromebook. And again, for the longest time, for a very, very long time, if not forever, for my knowledge of it, the no Mac for the most part has ever gone below $1,000 for the most part. And I think that's why, partially in my opinion, I think that's partially why Apple invented or created the iPad, because they wanted to give people a cheaper to make, honestly cheaper to make and produce device that could be half the cost of a laptop and be more personal than a computer can be. But I disagree with that on its own, but that's how they describe it a lot of times. And so you can get an iPad for now even less than like $200, $300 in some cases. So again, right around the Chromebook pricing factor, but it's not a laptop. And so you can of course buy a keyboard and a Bluetooth keyboard, Bluetooth mouse, and all those extra things for an iPad, which will make it a laptop, quote unquote, and it'll work. That's literally what my wife uses for college is an iPad Pro with everything else hooked up, but it is not a laptop still. You're not running desktop software. I mean, you are, but you're still running a mobile OS at the end of the day over a Chromebook for again still less money. And so I think that Apple, again, a long time ago now, introduced the iPad because they wanted to be part of the market share at all of what a Chromebook style, price wise and experience wise, device would do, but they didn't want to have a Mac at that price, because I think that at the time when that was becoming a thing, I think that Apple was like, we don't want to go that low of quality, or maybe they didn't want to essentially go that low for a consumer choice, essentially, or because I remember in a lot of old interviews with Steve Jobs where he was like, we don't ship crap, essentially is what he said. And that was made me laugh, because he's like we use good product, or he's like we use good materials that are expensive to get. We have the best software in the world, of course, is what he would say, and the best services. So why would you make a cheap version of that? Why would you do it? and he always said that back in like the late 90s and early 2000s. And I appreciated it a lot because it's like because there was also kind of like a consumer status quo kind of thing as well, where if you had like you could tell people had money in a way, as and I hate to say it's like in a weird kind of justification way, but you could see when people owned a Mac that they were a little bit more proud of it, like including myself. When you own a Mac computer, then like it was like somewhat of a dumb, but somewhat of a status symbol because you had spent that much money on a laptop or whatever it was. So again, I think that the iPad on its own for partially was done the way it was for price wise and for feature wise because again Apple wanted to really get into that lower level market share, but not have it be a computer essentially. So moving forward, and so then comes this MacBook Neo quite randomly, honestly. And when I saw it, heard of it, read about it, saw the video on it, I was very, very shocked in the first place because I never ever thought ever in a million years to my consumer tech brain that Apple would ever go that route or go as low, and I don't mean that in a negative way, just but go as low to go to take a MacBook Air basically or their best selling computer ever for the most part and then kind of dumb it down a little bit more with older chips and older processing and older everything a little bit and put that out in a cool new way with new colors and all that kind of stuff and make it half the price or a little bit less than half. And it's funny because every few days I'll get like a new update about MacBook Neo shipping timeframes and how it's always out of stock for the most part or on back order. So I know it's selling. I know it's a very very good selling computer, and I think that Apple. I think it's one of the best decisions that Apple's made in a long time because I think it kind of broke the system a little bit because if you watch my other video about how I feel about Tim Cook leaving as CEO and having John Ternus take over, and how I feel about Steve Jobs in the old history of Apple, I think that personally, I think that Apple as a company has kind of been a very consistent and kind of boring innovation-wise company for technology, not software-wise, but just overall technology for a long time. And again, I love their stuff. I do. I love their technology. I do. I'll always buy them. It's just what I'm used to having for 25 years. But the last 10 years or so, I think that they've taken a little bit of a break or just not really taking the time or as much investment personally in innovation of what they used to do, which was when Steve Jobs was around and he was making those decisions and those calls of just kind of like breaking their system of what was possible with tech, meaning that they would just literally throw things out into the pipe, throw things out product wise into the world and just see how it did. Even if they lost money, they would just see how it goes. And it didn't always work out, but there's many old interviews with Steve Jobs when he would flat out say like, well, he's like, and he'd be like, well, it didn't, it didn't sell, it failed, but we learned more about ourselves and our experience and our customers. And I remember him saying that was more important to him as CEO than almost anything else, is because in the way he put it was, in the end it'll all work itself out because he's like we have enough extremely good, extremely well selling systems and computers to where we can still do this kind of stuff of putting random things out there and seeing how it goes and still moving forward. So to me, the MacBook Neo is the first thing I've seen in a very long time where, again, it's still old technology that's inside and under the hood. Overall, it really is. But for, again, an average person, which is really now more of what Apple is competing for or trying to like control over for usage and market share, is the average person, not anymore of like pro creatives and people who work in the highest of the industry areas or things like that. That's not. I don't think that they're after that area anymore for whatever reason. And so I think when the MacBook Neo came out and then I saw the price and the technology that was underneath the hood, I was very very shocked because that they actually did that and put that out because of the fact that it was a new design for color. It brought back the colors of the original Apple stuff for the most part a little bit, or at least the idea of that. They put a new keyboard in there for like coloration too, and again the pricing is what got me the most because the pricing on it again is $599. for an Apple computer is incredibly nice, because that means that you can get all your teenage kids into it, and feel better about having them have a computer that's going to last for a long time. Because if there's one thing that I can tell everyone, and anyone who's ever owned an Apple laptop, for the most part, who's taking care of it, is that if you buy a Mac at all, or an Apple product, like on a Mac for the most part, that if you take good care of it, that they will last you years and years and years, way more than any other computer for the most part. Like my MacBook Pro that I edit all my videos on, I've now owned for 6 years, and it's now getting to the point where I can't really update it anymore for software, because that updates pretty quickly, but it still works. And so that's kind of that's always been, in my opinion, one of the better statuses about, or one of the better quality things about Apple, is that when you buy their computer, you're paying way more money than you have to, but your computer will last you if you take care of it a very long time. So I'm hoping, and only time will tell, but I'm hoping that with this MacBook Neo, that is Apple's reattempt or reinvigoration, whatever you want to call it, of throwing a product out there that's not what they usually do, or what they ever come out with ever, and trying it out. Obviously, it's selling. It's always out of stock that I hear, and it's always on back order, so it's working out for them. But putting it out there and getting that middle area of where the iPad still is and still has its own usability for sure for market share, but getting that area a good Mac computer that can last a long time. Because again, like even as my kids get older and get to the age of where they can start using computers and learning how to type and that kind of thing, like I would rather get them a MacBook Neo and know that it wasn't super super expensive to buy it, and that they can learn how to use a computer and have it not be a bad device. And so again, I think that it's a very strong effort by Apple to do that. Again, the pricing is insane. I love the fact that you can customize it online for more memory, more RAM, or more memory and RAM, and SSD space, all that kind of stuff. Now it still has some. Again, it's got old tech in there underneath the hood still, but it still is somewhat relevant technology for what it is, as far as like the chipsets and all that kind of stuff goes. So I applaud them for that too. And it makes me wonder, with it being out, what if they're ever going to reapproach or reinvigorate their feelings for the pro market. Because again, I think that they have kind of left the pro market behind for many years now, because they if you look at the last like 4 or 5 years of what they've released, hardware wise, it's been a lot more into the I think it's Gen Z, I think it is, or even millennial a little bit still left over, but to that market, to try and get the younger generation more into Apple stuff. And I mean, there's been a couple years where I would watch what software they release and what they featured software wise, especially on like iOS for phones. I remember when they came out with it. I remember when they came out with like the Memoji, I think it was, where it would be an avatar or emoji of you, and that was one of their bigger announcements for a year, and I was so disappointed with that, because I was like, that's what you're doing now, is you're making emojis for us. Like that's what you're working on at work, is emojis, really, not a new computer or whatever else. And it blew my mind when they announced that one. But and again, and even for their other mobile stuff, like the iPad or the watch, like they do continue to put out new stuff, but it's more of just like a speed bump or a new processor, which is all good too, I guess, whatever. But again, I think the MacBook Neo is a very needed, very strong effort by them to again retake what they've already got, what they've already been using, what they've already been working with for years now, for what's underneath the hood, and putting it into a cheaper price tag to allow a younger generation that can't spend that much money on a laptop maybe anymore, and get into Apple stuff. Because if anyone knows, including myself, it's that once you get into an Apple product and you enjoy it, usually you're hooked for a long time. Not always, but for the most part, most people will buy an iPhone or buy an iPad or whatever it might be, or a computer, and they will enjoy it quite a bit, and they'll get invested with iMessage or Apple Music, whatever it might be, and then they don't want to leave it because you have all your history on there, and your usage is all there. and it's just a pain in the butt to switch over to somewhere else. So again, I don't want to dive into all the specs about the MacBook Neo because I don't think it's really relevant to this. But overall, I think that the product itself is a great idea of taking, probably like a million of what they already have in their warehouses or production lines and putting it out there for a much cheaper price so that everyone, for the most part, every price tag now can get into a computer of a Mac. Because even once you have the MacBook Neo, I think that once you would graduate and kind of want to level up to maybe a more professional processor and more memory, that kind of thing, you would then want to go to a MacBook Pro, and then you're kind of already then used to the pricing. Because even a MacBook Pro now is only, a little over $1,000. I think it's like $1,199. So it's not too much of a jump from what a MacBook Neo is price wise, and that's a good thing. I think that that's a great idea. So in the comments below, let me know what you think about the MacBook Neo. Not necessarily like its tech specs, although it's part of it, but just the pricing, who it's for, what it is, how they did the release for it, and just overall if you think it's a good idea for Apple in general. And otherwise, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and of course subscribe for more content about technology and everything else. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.